Hello! In this video, I want to respond to Whatifalthist's take on Churchill. Okay, let us start and then I will respond.
Falsifying stats, you instead choose to tell a story with certain details and without others. Marxists are the most guilty of this, in that Marxist histories are normally so deceptive that it's often not even worthwhile to read them. I've read histories written by liberals, Christians, Muslims, fascists, anarchists, libertarians, rightists, and other groups, while in general the only group where you can't take it and leave it with their biases are Marxists, since their lies pervade every layer of their mental narrative.
I would actually really like to know what Marxist historians has Whatifalthist read, because some of the best historians I read on Stalin and on the French Revolution are actually Marxists. Now, I'm not even a Marxist, but for example, Isaac Deutscher's book about Stalin, his biography of Stalin, is one of the best historical books I have read. I would highly recommend it to anyone interested in Stalin. Isaac Deutscher is actually one of those communists that was very critical of Stalin. So if you are interested in a leftist critique of Stalin, I would recommend Isaac Deutscher to you. Also, Eric Hobsbawm is a great historian of the French Revolution and also a Marxist. But I would also highly recommend Henry Kissinger to you and his book, The World Order, for example. Now, Kissinger also obviously has some biases, just as the Marxists. Kissinger has a very positive view of the United States, which doesn't make him a bad historian. I mean, all historians have some kind of bias, and to me it seems a bit crazy to suggest that Marxists are even more biased than the fascists. But then again, the problem is Whatifalthist never mentions what historians is he talking about and what bias is exactly. But okay, let us continue.
People obfuscating 20th century history, it's mostly due to removing context rather than just lying about facts. People will say that the czarist government that came before the communists was innately primitive and innately impoverishing and people were starving, while the reality is the exact opposite. The czarist government was having mass industrialization and wealth growth. Or people try to cover up communist atrocities, or they try to make the Kaiser a worse player than he was.
Okay, now let me just start with stating the obvious, and that is nobody should cover up communist atrocities. But Whatifalthist seems to have a very positive view of the Russian Empire. Well, I have a question for Whatifalthist then. Why did then such an empire, conditions present in such an empire, produce communism? Why did millions of peasants and soldiers and workers fight for the Red Army if everything was so great in the Russian Empire? I mean, Whatifalthist just used the same arguments that communists often use, and that is the Soviet Union had some of the highest economic growth rate in the world. Now, does that make Soviet Union a great country? Well, if we go by Whatifalthist's metrics, then yes. But I suggest we also look at other metrics such as happiness of the population, individual rights, generally the quality of life generally. And I do think that one of the best things that the communists did is they gave republics to minorities in the Russian Empire. That is one of the ways in which communists became very popular, and other is wealth redistribution. So they took the land from the church and the peasantry, and that's how they gained popularity. Now, they did end up collectivizing all the land, but now why they did it is actually a very complex topic, and some historians argue that without collectivization, the Soviets would have never won against Hitler, which might be true. I mean, having a very centralized economy is actually good for waging a war. definitely a war like the Second World War. But yeah, I mean, my point is just if we focus on economic growth, then the Soviet Union is like the best country ever. But okay, let us continue.
Convey here is that for normal Western conservatives who believe in stuff like freedom, God, capitalism, or the Western tradition, the Nazis are our enemies on literally everything that we believe in. Hitler openly said that the classical liberal were the great ideological enemy to Nazi Germany, and that on an ideological basis they were closer to communists, in that National Socialism was the correct new form of socialism. I see so many people on the right simp for the Nazis, and I chuckle at how naive they are, given this was a society and state openly built to exclude them.
Okay, yeah, I actually agree with Whatifalthist. Hitler definitely wasn't in favor of traditional conservative values at the time. Like Hindenburg is a great example of a traditional conservative that actually allowed Hitler to become the German chancellor because he believed that Germany needs a strong man to protect them against communism. And I'm also surprised that Whatifalthist seems to deny any parallels between the Trump movement and Hitler's rise to power. Now, I'm not saying that Trump is about to start World War III, but okay, here are the similarities. Fascism is often described as revolutionary conservatism. So, fascism, on the one hand, claims to protect tradition against Bolshevism and return to a glorious past by launching a revolution against the current system that is weak and liberal and too incompetent to achieve anything. Now, if you don't see the parallels between that and the MAGA movement, then I don't know what to tell you. Like, maybe I can then only quote Obi-Wan Kenobi and say, then you are truly lost. Because I really don't know what to tell you. But okay, let's continue.
Which is fair to a certain degree, given the average Briton lived in completely degrading poverty. Over the course of the world wars, Britain became a socialist country. The Conservative Party was for the Empire, and the Socialists were against it. Due to this process, Britain became the most socialist country in Western Europe, with a 95% tax rate, state takeover of most of the important industries, the banning of gun ownership, the increase of the bureaucracy by a factor of 100, the death of the empire, the end of the aristocracy, amongst other things. If we're blaming anyone for the death of the empire, why not blame the people who openly called for the death of the empire, or the socialists? This also doesn't talk about a variety of other factors.
Okay, now, before I tell you my critique of Whatifalthist, let me start with a point of agreement. His point is, don't blame Churchill for the death of an empire. He wanted to preserve the empire, while the socialists were the ones to actually abolish it, or I should say, allowed certain countries to just proclaim independence without launching a war on them, like India, for example. But what's absurd about this? So Whatifalthist is justifying Churchill by saying, no, guys, he was a colonialist. Don't blame him for being against colonialism. Like, what the hell are we talking about? Is his audience really pro-colonialism? I mean, I was convinced that that was a pretty fringe movement, like being a colonialist in today's day and age, but I guess I was wrong. I don't know. I mean, but again, he's correct. Like, blaming Churchill for that is just not historically accurate. But then again, my critique of Churchill would be, among other things, that he was pro-colonialism. Also, if you're interested, Google the Great Iranian Famine. So Churchill and Stalin ended up working side by side, causing this huge famine in Iran during World War II that killed somewhere around 3 to 4 million people. So we can say then that Churchill killed at least 2 million Iranians, and also he caused the Bengal famine that killed around 2 million Indian people. Now, was Churchill trying to kill people for no good reason, like Hitler? Well, no, that's a huge difference. Hitler was killing people out of pure irrational hatred, while Churchill was trying to just gain resources for his own people by exploiting others in a fight against fascism. That's a huge difference. So in that aspect, Churchill reminds me more of Stalin, actually. But yeah, and other than that, well, okay, the far right argument against Churchill is he refused peace with Hitler. Well, okay, I'm glad to say that both me and Whatifalthist agree. What makes Churchill a hero is the fact that he didn't accept peace with Hitler. You see, this idea that peace is always better than war is just not accurate. I mean, we fight wars because sometimes peace is surrender. Like, Stalin could have just surrendered and given the most prosperous part of his country to Hitler, but that's not a peace worth having. Like, not to mention that such a peace would still result in an ethnic cleansing of the Slavic populations, and yeah, so sometimes peace is just not worth having. Okay, let's go on.
I hope you can still respect me as a thinker or a man, much as I would like you to respect Churchill even if you disagree. I had a conversation with a friend where he was trying to get me to watch Nazi apologist historic content. I gave him a hard no. He was shocked and kinda angry, saying that I wasn't being reasonable. The conversation, long story short, involved me saying that not all of life is reasonable. Our society likes to pretend every player in a game is rational and
Now, this has to be the funniest part of the video. Like, what the hell, man? Like, the most reasonable thing that Whatifalthist has done in his life is probably refusing to watch Nazi propaganda content. And now he has to defend himself by saying, look, nobody is reasonable 100% of the time. Like, what the hell, man? I mean, look, I do think that it's valuable experience to read Mein Kampf or to see Nazi propaganda from the 1940s and 30s. That's studying history. But viewing Nazi YouTuber videos from today is really just a waste of time. I mean, from communist YouTubers, you can still learn something useful, gain a useful perspective. Nazi YouTubers you should only watch if you want to debunk them or simply out of curiosity. But okay, what's truly funny about this is that, yeah, Whatifalthist kind of felt that there are no logical reasons for refusing to watch Nazi content. He just sometimes has to admit to be emotional, and that's why he refuses to watch such content. But okay, not to make this video too long, I think we should end on this note. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you like this video.